Or same class, Pat, you got ready?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Me, cool.
Hey, good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Welcome any guests that are here. The first item that we need to do is approve the agenda. And I did get a phone call this morning asking if we could potentially go into executive session kind of before we get started, but I want the minutes to as well, so. We can approve the agenda as is and add the executive session at the beginning. If anybody's good.
Are we moving it? So
No, we'll have executive session.
it'll be two executive sessions.
With Brian Garrison.
Brian Garrison will be here after 8:30
I'll make a motion to approve
with the change.
with the change.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Do we know what reason? Do we know anything other than?
We'll disclose it's some member information I need to share with just the board only.
And it can't wait until the executive session we have scheduled. I mean, 2 hours is going to make a difference.
I prefer to do it before, so the executive session at the end doesn't go on. I just need 15 minutes.
Would it be a benefit with Brian being here?
Yeah, I think it's just for the board only.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. All right, so if we can excuse you guys. And the next topic on the agenda is for your information. So questions.
On the closed action items for it to be the third one, the line extension. Looking through that, there's 7 listed. To me, it appears that the Rule 25 extension of distribution service lines was not followed consistently. I've got several additional questions. The first one is, it was a subdivision, and I believe on 25-5, it states that the entire amount will be paid up front. We didn't charge the entire amount. Maybe we need to change the rule to word it better, but if we're going to charge one developer 100% of the cost, we need to charge all developers 100% of the cost.
Which one specifically do?
That's number one.
Hold on, let me get there.
And you go to 25-5 on the rules, page 15. Real estate developer applications or other applications where the revenue from the extension is so meager that it may be doubtful that the fair return on the extension of the investment be earned will pay the REMC the entire cost of the line extension upfront.
So they did pay the entire,
That's not what this shows. This shows there was $78,000 in cost and they paid not quite 50.
that doesn't mean they didn't pay their contribution. That's two.
No. We have charged one other developer the entire amount.
Which one?
I don't believe we can say names, and I can share that after the meeting. But that's the very first one. The second one,
So can I ask?
no, we need to, these are my
Would
concerns.
be that the estimate didn't match the actuals too. I mean.
No. What this is so there's a cost to do a project. I'm just gonna say we're doing a subdivision that costs $100,000, right? Of that $100,000, there may be some backbone stuff that we're doing, right? Which would be at our cost. It's what the policy says to do. So let's say 25.
I don't think that's what the policy says, and I know I got another member who had to pay the entire amount up front on his subdivision.
What I'm saying though is because the overall cost doesn't match what the member AOC says, that doesn't mean they're not paying 100%.
So what does AOC mean?
It's a aid of construction. So it's
So it
what
should-
their proportion of that project would be.
But it-
They'll never be 100%, because there's always some backbone stuff that we're doing.
Well, that's where I think we need to look into this further because I believe we charged one member 100% and we didn't charge this member.
That's
Okay,
Not
the second one, that was the one that brought all the questions. The board made specific modifications, specific amounts and we contributed a lot more than what the board approved. So that's on the second one.
Back up, hold on. So the only thing you guys approved,
Go back and read the meeting minutes. It spells it out exactly what we approved.
you guys approved,
A dollar amount.
no, you approved, no, you didn't.
It's in the meeting minutes that there's dollar amounts.
No, there's not.
Okay.
I think we should bring that up and take a look at it.
Yeah, let's
That's
do that.
completely false.
Let's do that. We
No,
got.
I'm not. Okay.
That's what you stated, Jeff, so
That's fine. That's,
Let's bring it up.
I believe in my email that I sent, I spelled out the amounts that we approved.
What month was those approved? The meeting minutes?
Can you call up the email that I sent that had the amounts?
We have the meeting minutes from the meeting that you're talking about, where it says a dollar amount. That's what was stated. What meeting was that? Does anybody remember?
Didn't we have their bid sheet in front of us? And we went over the bid sheet and the amounts, and we waived the overhead cost.
So we did,
But at a specific amount that was on the quote.
the overheads, we definitely,
Correct.
we definitely.
Overhead, we did the third, the true up went longer.
Correct.
And then I believe there was more than just the overhead.
That was all in the email that I sent that questioned this.
What I'm saying is it wasn't a set amount. You said overheads and this.
So then you changed the pattern of where you ran the wire, correct? Because it says that changed.
You said two things now. One being that we're not following
Okay.
the policy. That's completely false.
I don't believe it to be false. Right.
Then you should have brought this up before the meeting and I could have went through and answered all your questions.
Okay, I will
This
put
is
it
the
in
first
writing.
I heard of it. And that's.
This is
accurate.
closed action items. Jump down to number 7 and tell me how that can be true.
7.
You didn't charge the member anything.
Because, see, that's it. They weren't charging anything because their revenue credits met over the $31,200.
It says for a home. It doesn't say for line extension. It's a home, a residential home.
No, it's not.
Well, that's what it says on here, home and line relocation. $31,246 or $31,246, members AOC 0.
I can look it up. I'd suggest let's look it up.
Go.
All right, well, I'll take the action item. If I remember right, and again, if someone would have asked this question, I could have gave you all this data, but I can tell you right now that Phillips, from what I remember, because I
Mention names.
was 0, huh?
I'm not supposed to mention names.
It's not a members lab. I'll get you the information on it, but I do know for a fact.
I would like more information on all 7 items.
On August 26, 2021, on motion by Suzanne, seconded by Jeff and carried, the following will apply to the Veterans Way line extension, which will include, we talked about, number 1, material overhead and labor overhead costs will be exempt.
Okay.
Doesn't say dollar amount.
Okay,
Item number 2, revenue credit will be extended from policy of 30 months to 60 months.
I remember that.
So there were no dollar amounts.
Okay. It was on the quote that we were given that night.
Yeah, they were listed.
Yes,
So we
that
didn't
was,
approve those specific amounts.
I thought we did.
Well, the minutes don't say that. I'm just.
Okay, thank you.
Now, if you give me one more second, I'm gonna check a couple different places. Because I remember that the revenue credit was. Again, is exactly what the policy tells us to do. We've been talking about these line extensions. I suggest we go over those policies again because we're doing what the policies say. We've had this on the action item 20 times now in the last 5 years. We're doing what it says. If we want to do something different, let's do it.
We need to talk
I'm all for it. You know, to get to it.
There a work order number listed?
Yes. No, there's not one listed.
I'll find it.
All right, we'll work on getting it. So for that one, I believe it's revenue credit. We just talked about the way out there, which talked about the meeting minutes there. And then for the subdivision one, is it clear to, I guess, the board, because again, this is what the policy says. We say the total cost of the project, that's what their aid of construction would be. It doesn't always equal the total project cost. It wouldn't, it hardly, rarely does. But if we want to change that, let's change it in policy. I'm all for it. But we've had a bunch of these line extension action items, probably 20. And we always come back to, we're following the policy. So if we don't like what the policy is telling us to do, let's change the policy.
So you put this as an action item.
I guess what the one I'm gonna do is, or I don't know what all you want. So for the this number 7, I get. But I remember because I asked, why is it 0? And there's a reason why, which follows policy. Again, if we don't like the policy, let's change the policies.
Maybe that's what we can revisit. Do this.
We'll keep on trying to get it. But so the action item I got is number 7. Which other one? Number 1. Do you want me to just tell you number 1, what the difference is between 78 and 49? Why that's different? They're going to pay 100% of the AOC. That's what the policy says. But the AOC is going to be different than what the total cost of the project is. On 99.9% of these.
Because part of that project is cost we're incurring for our benefit
It's something we decided to do that benefits us, which is the policy change you guys did.
down the road, not necessarily on this project, but somewhere REMC is going to benefit from it.
Correct.
So we're not assessing them that fee.
Just like the New Point job we were just talking about, right? That's in the middle of the field today. We're moving out now. The cost here is very little, but we're moving it out to the road. So the cost on the 2 ends to move it out to the road, we're not charging them. It's not part of the AOC. It'll be part of the overall cost, but it won't be part of the AOC. So even if they had to pay 100% of that, we would, and again, on that one, it comes back to, do we need to go over exactly what this policy says? Because we've been through line extensions
Many times.
a lot. And if we don't like what it produces, let's change policy.
Got it?
Yep.
What other questions? We have. Comment I want to make under, for your information, save the date. At the annual IC meeting, there was some directors there was a meeting that had taken place. Anyway, they're offering this opportunity, this retreat at French Lick on Saturday and Sunday, the 29th and 30th. And I think it would be good for all of us to at least take a closer look at. So it's on the weekend. So look at that closer. There is going to be additional information coming out next month. Any additional questions for your information? No? All right, we'll go to the next item. Safety minute and cool moment.
All right, so for a cool moment, we've been doing breakfast with Tourette's as a way of kind of member engagement. And then we did lunches with the managers. We've been doing those for a couple of years. We do them every other month. So we were starting to get participation to be kind of low, so we wanted to try something else. So we did a round table. We did it actually here in the office. A decent turnout. We had 3 or 4 online, I think, and maybe 10 in the room. So anyways, I thought it was cool. We had people participate. This is not going to take the place of our town halls that we do. We got quite a few people not quite a few, but we had 3 or 4 people that called in and wanted to know why it was it was at 10 a.m. And our comment was that these aren't going to take the place of our town halls, which we're actually going to be scheduled to do one either late April or May, which will be at night so that members can engage at night also. But anyway, cool moment was we had participation, I thought a pretty good discussion.
That's good.
Some topics. We keep going. Oh, the other cool moment, and I got this late in breaking, so apologize, but
What do you guess the average age is of the participants?
I'm not gonna guess the age. That's
Friday at 10 a.m., can we assume?
It was actually all over the board. There were people younger than me here.
yep.
Say it again, I'm
I'm
sorry.
just thinking on Friday at 10 o'clock.
So
And typically what we find, Clay, we've done a bunch of surveys and that is our membership, that age. So doing it in the morning, 10 o'clock and at noon is when you're going to catch those folks. Again, these don't take the place of our nightly town halls where people engage, but I can tell you that even when we do, we actually get better participation at the 10 o'clock in the morning than we do at night, believe it or not. We have one at the end of April and May, and I bet you we'll have just as much, if not smaller participation in that town hall at night than we did this one here. And that's what our survey data tells us, right? That's our, our demographics is between 65 and 70 some years old. Anyway, the second cool moment, Jeff received his CCD from IEC. So congratulations. Can we keep rolling? Yeah. All right, so quick safety moment. As you all know, we probably got weather or might have weather coming in tonight while we're here. So if there is a tornado warning, just follow us. We're going to go that way and to the left. There's the men's restroom here is all block walls. We all probably can't fit in there. So just follow me. We're going to go in that way and to the left, and there's a room over there. So follow us. If we get a tornado warning, we need to go somewhere. Second thing is seatbelt safety. Something that IEC, again, every month, they kind of have a theme around safety moments. So our safety moments really has been around safety belts. So again, seatbelts save more lives than, well, you can read it up there, but that's our safety moment. Again, if we have a tornado warning, please follow us. Wear your safety belts.
All right, thanks, Brad. Next item is approving January meeting minutes. I do want to make a comment up front. There was a motion that was passed that had to do with Carl, one of your nominating committee folks. We can approve this as is unless there's additional modifications. And then we will mention that when we approve the other nominating committee member that you found. So. Any motion to approve unless there's any modifications that anybody sees.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Okay, so minutes are approved. Next item then, we'll go into the CEO report for that.
All right, so a few things from CEO update. One, this last month, we focused in on the 2023 goals, which you guys will see them for the first time. They're in your board packet. Not looking necessarily for approval for those. You can't see anything. But we've been working on those goals. Risk management, we did our risk management, which again, we're going to go over tonight. Been working on the last or two very large line extension projects. So one of them, we've talked about both of those tonight. And then working through transition plans. So we have, two new folks up front, a new manager up there that we're doing some shadow training with. So working through those things. There was a question asked on meter pull, so I kind of wanted to go over where we're at on that. So there's 19 actual closed with 110 open. And of those 110, 61 of them are waiting on members. 27 are in process with our contractor and 22 are in process with our staking department. What I will note is Brent will be working on making follow-up phone calls to the members because we're waiting, there's 61 of them that we're essentially waiting on, the member to get the work done on their side. And then contractor pole replacements. So there's 330 that we're doing through our contractor. And right now we're kind of working on procuring materials. We usually don't get started on those until weather breaks a little bit in the spring, but we are procuring the materials. Happy to announce that 42 have been included. So the balance of that 330 and the 450 that was rejected, I had asked in budget for sort of approval for our crews to do as time comes up. And so out of those 120, we have been able to complete 42 of those. So cool. Making some headway on them. Last thing I was going to do an update on is broadband. So Sam did meet with the deputy director up at the Indiana broadband office on January 23rd. He was just basically discussing broadband activities within the state. We also represented at a meeting locally with leaders of the community to discuss about broadband for the community. The discussion was with local representatives and federal, really centered around the BEAD grant. So what we got out of that was the timeline still appears to be late 2023 for the BEAD grant for Indiana, with the grant actually opening up Q1 of 2024. So they'll announce the dollars at the end of 2023. Grant will be opening Q1 of 2024. So it sounds like that is still the timeline. Of course, that could change, but that's what it sounds like it's still going to be. The other thing that Sam's been working on is we were contacted by NRTC, who did our feasibility study, and they feel like this next round of OKRA grants, which they believe the state's saying right now is going to open in April, that we may be a good candidate for that. So Sam's working on all that. As you guys remember, we said we were going to come back before we spend any money on or any dollars on grant opportunities. We're going to come back to the board for you all to approve. So if we feel like the OKRA grant is going to be something that we want to apply for, we'll obviously have to do some work there and spend some money. So we'll bring that back to this board. If it ends up coming up or it really is April, we may have to meet, it may be a special board meeting or whatever. But anyway, I just want to let you all know that that's coming down the pike. Any other questions on project updates? Let me keep rolling. Sure. All right, so to go over some of the metrics for January. So as you all know, January was fairly warm. So we're well above, almost 31% warmer than our 5-year average. So it was a pretty warm January. The HDD, which is a measure of the heating degree days, was at 748, and the 5-year average is 1107. So as you can tell, it's pretty warm month. If you look at our average or our purchased energy through Hoosier, so we were right around 31 million. You can tell that's about roughly 7.4% of our our 5-year average. So the blue dot right here is our 5-year average for January. Right here is where we're at. So we're well below. Again, that follows the weather essentially what's telling us.
Brett, the last bar should be 23. We got 2022 in the legend at the bottom.
Oh, yeah, it needs to be changed. Got you. Thank you. And then demand, again, well under our demand, about 11.2% under in demand. So again, for January, there's our 5-year average right there where my dot's at. Here's where we are at. Hey, I got that one. So well under the 5-year on that. So if you look at kilowatts sold per our budget, we started the year, which this typically doesn't happen, but with it being warmer, we're about 8.85 under budget. And you can tell most of that's coming from residential to budget. If you look at this graph over here, anyone that's under, any class that's under is essentially under budget. Anyone that's over, you can see small commercial, medium commercial really made up, at least for the commercial class, where they ended up at 5.87. Power cost tracker, I've been showing this in the last couple of months just so you guys can kind of see how is our tracker reacting compared to Hoosier's. So you can kind of see where we're at here in January 23, which is where we kind of expected to be. It's still flattening out and trimming up from last year a little bit. Although Hoosier's will be jumping, as we know, in Q2. So that'll average back out. But you can see it does follow fairly well. Daily SAIDI, so really it's been a quiet, knock on plastic, I guess. It's been a pretty quiet January. You see a few blips there, but nothing that got to the point of a major storm or major outage. Couple other things I'm going to start going over. So there was nothing that showed up, but there are some blips. I was going to go over a few of those. So we did have the vehicle or machinery was kind of our number one. We had a center circuit coming out due to a car accident on a 3-phase pole. It was about a 5-hour duration. We did have, our second one was equipment, which was a circuit out of our Washington substation where it cut out failed. That was about a little over an hour. And then trees and other, these were really spread across 13 different outages that varied during the month. So again, pretty quiet month when it comes to outages. Any questions on metrics? And then the next thing, if you open up the 2023 goals. So essentially, I'm going to go over just a high level review of this. Sure. So the focus areas are strategic planning. So we did all of our strategic planning at our offsite. We came up with the initiatives. The team all took those away and developed projects. So this is going to be one of our project managers' first task once April hits here and our transition training is kind of through. To put together that 3 to 5 years. So what we'll do is we take all the projects that we've got, they'll go to our priority committee. We'll assign priority to those, we'll rack them and stack them. Then we'll assign resources to them and plan them out for this 3 to 5 years. That 3 to 5 year plan will bring back to the board. So that's that first chunk that the focus area there, strategic planning, that's really what it is. The second one is that broadband project. I put in here as a measurable just to, we're building our feasibility case. Obviously, we're going to be bringing to the board approval for any dollars we spend in any type of grant dollars that we would go after. Reliability obviously is a focus area. So you can see in here to implement the construction work plans that we had planned, the red tag poles, and then we have the bucket truck and the meter truck coming in. Of course, they were ordered because they're 2 years out, a year or so ago, but they'll be coming in this year. Safety and security, couple different projects here, maintaining the life cycle management of our assets. So there's computers and iPads on the docket to be replaced and a set of switches that you guys approved in the budget. To advance our security system or our IT systems. I asked Sam he's going to report out to the board, and I think actually we may be ready to do this next month. But I've asked him that I want to do 2 report outs annually, kind of really talking about like, what are we doing in security from an IT standpoint, right? What are we doing with all these phishing attempts and all this data that we're collecting and all of the patchwork that we're doing on the IT system. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know much about it other than it's sort of, I know it's a risk and it's something that we need to be watching. So he's going to report out twice this year of kind of here's what we're doing, right? So y'all know. That's been one thing. It's been a very common theme at all the conferences that we go to is you need to be educating your board on kind of what you're doing from a security standpoint, an IT security standpoint, because we do house in our servers very sensitive information from a member standpoint. So making sure that we're reducing those risks and doing our work from an IT standpoint is important. Second things in there is just identifying, this is on there every year, identifying mitigating company risk. We're going to report out today on our Q4 risk management. And again, we'll do that quarterly. And then implement the safety improvement plan through our RESAT program. That's something that we do as a company every year. Special projects. So create it, and I will go through why this is on the list when we go through our KRTA data here in just a minute, but working on some culture stuff there. Then I also put in here building CEO to board relationships and trust. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are as far as like actionable things there. I put kind of my thoughts on it, but I'd really like to have a discussion on what we want to do in that area specifically. Optimize organizational personnel changes. So as you guys all know, we did quite a bit of an organizational change in the last 6 months. So making sure that we're utilizing those, we were approved to get 2 line apprentices, making sure we have transition plans and to get those guys up and going. And then what are we going to do with them, right? So the whole idea was so that we can do some more work in-house. We have the appropriate coverage from a safety personnel standpoint. So we're doing our flagging and everything that we need to be doing. So this one is specifically around making sure that we're optimizing those changes that we did. You also know that we're moving one of the front folks back to as an admin position in operations. Again, what's the plans to get that going and what's that person going to be doing? What's that look like? Making sure that we capitalize on those changes that we committed to doing. And then the last one is plays on this committee, but it's really the operations building in the back, bringing, the top options, pros and cons to the board by the end of the year as far as what we want to do there. So overall, those are sort of the focus areas, the goals and the measurables that we came up with. More than happy to answer questions or have discussion, or if you guys want to talk about it as a board, these are your goals to us. So. Yes. So even though, okay.
There was a poll where they put their.
I think we need to approve something, maybe not tonight, but at some point in time. So anybody have any comments as it was presented to us just now? Where you see something that maybe needs to be modified?
I don't see the right of way stuff that we talked about.
Yeah, that was part of, are you talking specifically looking at we can add that in here? We were going to wait as a part of
It did come out of the strategic planning, and you said if we had a slot open up, it would be on here.
I suggest let's put it on there. If the board's okay with that, that's what I want discussion on this.
That was the right of way maintenance
Correct. It was the feasibility of looking at a few different
options to
options.
do the maintenance.
Yep. So that'd go under the reliability enhancement, right?
And the retirement of the
capital credits.
I don't see that on here either.
Yeah, I would keep them on there.
Board all agree, we can add those too, that's not a problem. I think both of those are just the completion of the project, is that the measurable?
You mean for the capital credit?
Yeah. I mean, there's really no measurable other than here's what we feel like is feasible. Do we want to go forward or not?
How we're going to implement that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Recommendations, maybe.
Yeah. On the special projects, the very last thing, your deliverable, what was by 12/31? Would you not want to maybe move that up a little bit if there's any budgetary concerns?
Yeah. What are you thinking?
10,
Or maybe September?
September? Yeah, you might want to move that up.
Clay, is that feasible? Where you sit on the committee,
Or,
having something to bring to the board by September?
Except that I haven't heard or seen anybody as far as talking about any other type of plans. I know we met with one company and we went back there and looked at everything. But I haven't heard back. You guys heard back from them as far as,
This is the project leader right here,
you heard back from anybody, Matt?
the operations building.
Yes, I've heard back from Force. They gave me a design paperwork from last week or so. I need to get with everybody and show that to them.
Okay.
So I will send out an email tomorrow. Try to get a time for when we can go over what they gave us. They're the first one to give us something.
Can we vote?
You can.
You're so fun.
Company that we met with, that they,
We need to follow back up with them. So, and then I have a couple more that I've got messages with that I need to follow up with again.
Jason.
It's up to you.
I don't want to put it down if it's not realistic. I mean, if you guys aren't near, it, there's no need to put
As far
September.
as far as it's money.
So as a board, let's be prepared to make any additional changes before next month and plan to approve the goals at March's board meeting. So if there's any kind of comments, discussion that needs to occur throughout the next month, feel free to send me emails. Unless you have anything else to include for tonight. Okay, so that's the route we will go with the goals. I think that takes us to the next topic. Report out for the risk management report out.
Yeah, so I'll just go through a quick summary here. So essentially, we met as a team on January 27th. This was for our Q4 risk management. So my team gets together and we talk about what risks are new, any updates or any that closed. So we closed quite a few there. The ones we added, which I'll go through these. One was we noticed that our gas tank dikes, the plugs don't get used because water just sits in them. So that's something that we documented here. I believe Matt is looking at some plugs that work differently.
And I contacted Premier Ag and they were gonna look into it more, but they didn't really know what I was talking about. So I don't know if I maybe opened a can of worms, shouldn't have.
Second risk we opened was, and I know we've talked about that quite a bit in here, is what happens if we don't send the appropriate price signals to EV owners and they start charging on peak, right? So essentially, if you get any saturation, and I don't have the dollar, but it's pretty significant. If you get a decent saturation in your territory and everyone goes home and plugs in right on peak, our overall bill goes up and it gets subsidized by everyone because you don't know where that's coming from, right? Because it comes from a substation charge. So this risk is if we don't do anything. At this time right now, we're working with Hoosier and their pilot program. That's the whole reason we did the charger out here. And the whole reason that if you saw on Facebook, we're doing kind of a giveaway on the home chargers level 2 is to get these out into our all 18 members' territories, because the different territories, according to how close you are to metropolitan area like Indianapolis, those look different. And so the whole point of that again is to work on an appropriate price signal or some type of rate to incentivize folks with an EV to charge off peak so that you don't have this issue. Again, this isn't something that's going to happen next year, right? But it's something that we need to be aware of and we need to follow along and find something to put in place, because if not, this is a dollars risk that will hit our members. And then we did have some discussion over, obviously, as you guys hear the news, substation security and just overall plant or facilities security. We had a pretty long discussion over it here. We've had some long discussions at Hoosier over it. At this point, it's just a risk we're talking about and doesn't have an action at this point, so.
Can you talk a little bit about the distributed resource here, the solar specifically in this bankruptcy? How is that removing our risk in that for this pink energy? I don't know what that is.
So that company was one of the companies in town that essentially, try to put this in a nice way, was selling the product that with a business case that may not align with what a member might see. And we would get the phone calls. There are other developers in town, local developers, that we don't get phone calls from members that have the systems on there, right? So what we wanted to do here, this was a risk that we identified, I don't know, about a year or 2 years ago. And we did a, what do you call it? We did a workshop. We partnered with Michael Oram and did a workshop out at our solar field to educate folks on kind of things to look for. So by completing that, and that's something we'll probably do yearly, by completing that and then by this company no longer being relevant, we felt like the risk was, all right, we don't really need to do anything more than just be a resource to our members. That was the thought behind it. But the Peak Energy was the company that,
There are others that are doing it still.
yeah, but not as bad in our territory. Yes, more reputable. We don't, the only calls we're getting from members that their system wasn't producing what they were being told was that one company. That's it. So our team felt like that was enough to reduce the risk. It's still a risk, and it's just nothing we're taking action on other than doing formal ongoing training. Not training, but education. Other than that, that was really I also attached the risk register in there just so you guys can see it.
Any additional questions for Brad regarding risk management? Okay, we'll go to the next item. So yeah, we're ready for you, I think, with the.
And I can answer number 7 on the list. I've looked it up and I pulled up all the notes. So there was a location that service had been disconnected to a decade prior. Transformer was gone, the poles though were left, the poles were in the right of way. When the new home was built versus putting everything on old poles, we moved it out to the road instead of going through the right of way. Since there was going to be a bunch of work needed anyway, it made sense to put it by the road, is what the notes here say.
Which means they would have not paid an AOC on that.
So that's why it would have, versus rebuilding it where it was in the right of way, we rebuilt it by the road. Because in the long run, it'll be cheaper for the REMC if a pole breaks by the road than it will be to the middle of the field. Because it even says in here that the old notes from 2013 needs to be dry if going to be retired. And then it talks about dilapidated and no transformer, no meter, and this is back in 2013. So from what I can remember in talking to Brian and reading his notes here, it was for the REMC's benefit to replace old facilities to move them to the road. If we're gonna have to replace them, let's put them by the road. So does that answer the question with that one?
So our past practice has been, per the policy, we wouldn't charge them for that because we're doing it for us. They would have told us not to move it.
Yeah, they wouldn't, there would have been no need to charge the member to leave it where it was. We'd just have to fix it.
Did we get that answered, Jeff, in your mind?
There you go.
This month, really the main thing to speak to is we sold the 1,000 MCM wire and we got paid for it. So our plant has gone down and our cash went up. I mean, outside of that, there's really nothing of significance on the balance sheet. Next, we have our operations. In general, as Brett said earlier, it's been a lot warmer month than historical. Our controllable expenses are under budget. The right of way, we budget that across a 12-month period. We didn't do a ton of right of way in January, so that's going to be under budget. Then billing is over in labor and benefits because the training that's going on, people are still putting their time to labor and benefits as they're training new people. In general, though, our margins at the year end were or at the first month, we're within $1,000. Everything else, it's kind of a lot of stuff. It's hard to, it's first month. I mean, there's not a lot of trends to be noted yet. Next, cash up because we sold wire. I mean, that's really that was the biggest thing for the month. I mean, that's really the only financial news for the most part there. Anybody have any questions on the basic financials?
We good?
Told Matt this was a very boring month when it comes to financials.
Everyone good? So. Ready?
Yep, so we're gonna go through some KRTAs. So for those that don't know, so we do an ops review every year. And essentially what we do is we put everybody in the company in one room and we go over the metrics that this board and management put together, that these are the metrics that we want to track on an ongoing basis, right? We're gonna track and trend these. We're gonna have discussions. Quite honestly, it's been a very beneficial process because there's things that the linemen specifically might see that it's like, yeah, good point. And you're going to see here in a minute, some of the metrics on, our outages are tending to be flat, although our lost consumer hours are trending way down, have been for the last 5 years, right? Well, why is that? One of our linemen talked about, Brett, you don't realize when you actually have a right of way that's cleaned out, it's much easier to respond and to fix these lines. So that's one of those things, Dale, where, I don't know how to put a dollar amount on that as far as like the right of way benefits, but I can tell you, according to our lineman, which he brings a real life perspective, right? So he's boots on the ground dealing with these. He's like, yeah, we still are going to have outages because of weather, right? But the way we can respond to these things is much quicker because we can get through the right of ways, right? Instead of being in the wires all through trees and everything else, they can get right to it. So those are the conversations that we look for in these operation reviews. I will tell you that I think the operation review is about 70 some slides. I'm not going to bore you with 70 slides. So we're going to go through the ones that cause probably the better discussion and the things that I thought were important for the board to know. Now, I will tell you that under number 9 in your guys' call to order, the report there, it has the summaries of what we kind of discussed. And then in the appendix, it has every single slide for every single KRTA or metrics that we all decided we wanted to track. So if you want to go through all of them, you can. I'm just picking out the ones that we thought that we wanted to talk about in front of everybody. So again, we had this meeting on 1/16. It was really to go over this is 21 data. So we don't get the data until June, July of the next year. So you're always going to be that time frame behind, essentially. So first slide didn't change a whole lot. Our statistics are pretty steady year over year. we're a 68 megawatt system. We're about 60% commercial and industry, 40% residential. Serve the same folks. Got about 1,061 miles of line and about 8,900. And I looked today to see our meters are increasing, and they are, but it's very flat. It's less than 1% increase year over year. Services are same, and community focuses really are unchanged. So Roundup. So we've awarded about 304 grants now to about 117 different organizations, about 5,000, almost a little over $500,000. Another thing that I thought was important here was 80% of our members are enrolled into Roundup, which I thought was it's staying consistently a lot higher than what I expected. Stop me if anyone has a question. This is retail sales. So this is one that I do show because we are a little different than other co-ops. I've got my reasoning of why I think so. But the average residential usage or kWh per month, we trend right around that 1,200 spot, which is quite a bit higher than other co-ops in the state or across the United States. So that consistently, we are a little different in that area. User loading. So this tracks just kWh or megawatts per hour, specifically across wholesale, industrial, and IPT. Really the story is here, it's flat, right? So we're not growing in a kWh standpoint really in any of the classes, maybe a little, but relatively pretty flat. So NCP, these are our peaks, right? So in 2021, we peaked on 8/12 at 5 p.m. Similar in 2020, but overall, you can see our peaks are flat to declining again, I would suggest. Our biggest peak is right around that 78, 79-ish megawatts. So I roughly say we're a 70 megawatt system, but it's pretty flat. With 20 and 21 being pretty low, and of course, we all know 19. This is one that I think the board actually created around affordability. So what this tracks is what percentage of our median income for this area is used for electricity. So I don't know if you call 3.2 to 3.1 really declining, but fairly flat, I would suggest. This is single phase billing compare. So again, this takes all 38 co-ops and kind of compares it to an IOU in our area. As you can see in 2022, it went well over that. But the main general thing to notice here is if you look at the difference between the third quartile and the first quartile, right? The difference between the orange line and the red line, there's not many dollars in between these. So year over year, compared to what your tracker may be doing, can really shift you. But in general, where we should be, I would suggest, compared to everyone else. And again, this is just one metric of many. This is on 1,000 kWh. I can tell you we track both 1,000 and 2,000. They're very, very, very similar. And we were actually asked about this data point in the roundtable just the other day. No idea why this thing just randomly quits. So this looks at, these are all 38 co-ops in the state of Indiana. The blue ones are Hoosier, the dark black ones are Wabash, and then there's one or two gray ones that are sprinkled in here that are independent, right? So what this looks at is the difference between the high and the low on 1,000 kWh a month. So just shy of what our average would be. We are the green line here, which is just right on that average. But again, I would suggest that even between the high and the low, so this isn't quartiles, this is the high and the low, still not a huge range of difference. And you can also tell that there's no real correlation between a Hoosier system and a Wabash system when you look at this, and we're somewhere in between, essentially. Stop me if you got questions. This is our service stats. Really not a whole lot to report here, other than the reason I show this is, you know, we've been talking about these. It's in our strategic plan, these idle services. They are fairly high when you compare to the state. We do tend to keep services around rather than retire. Annual meeting stats. So of course, we jump up here when we go to early and online voting. We jumped from really about 11% up to 22. So we doubled our participation in voting when we did that. And then you can see from 21 to 22, we bounced about 1% increase over the 2020 year, 2020, which was COVID. And we think more people were home, more people were voting. I think we've been over these two charts probably 100 times as a board and management, but I thought I'd show it again. So, you know, essentially, if you look at it, people are using online, little, but right, it's growing online and paper is declining and our overall participation is increasing from 2021. Really, I'd say it's a pretty good trend. This one's kind of hard to put into that trend just because it was using the old style, which was not an early voting. You had to be on site. So I suggest that it's going in the direction we'd want it to go, although I'd like to see 100%. Outage data. So we track this from 2019. Again, we're looking at anything above that orange line is what we would consider a major storm statistically. And you can see in 2021, which is the year we're talking about, if you guys remember the dreaded June 18th and 19th, which I try to get out of my head as soon as possible, so I don't remember all the details. But we had a major storm where it was really, really high winds, had folks out for an extended period of time, which drove that number way up. And then again, on December 11th of 2021, we had some high winds come in with wind gusts above 50 miles an hour, and it drove us above the line. So overall outage data. So if you look at the green, it's looking at lost consumer hours without major storms. So when we report this to the government, they want to look at it two ways. And the way they look at it is you're always going to have storms and you're always going to have major storms. Statistically, if you consider it a major storm, they sort of remove that out and say, well, part of this is just out of your control, right? So that is the green is with no major storms included in the numbers. So in other words, those two events that I just talked about, you remove all those out.
They're not in there.
And then the blue is everything. So specifically what we have to report is the green. That's kind of what we try to track. And as you can see from 2021, we are going in the right direction as far as outages, lost consumer hours per member, right? So that's how we get, if you just look at an outage, you know, one outage could be 15 minutes, another outage could be 10 hours, right? Lost consumer hours puts that time of restoral back into the metric. But we also look at number of outages, and again, it's the same way. Green is without major storms, and you can see it's relatively flat. And that's a discussion we had as a team. Why are we trending down on lost consumer hours, but pretty flat overall outages? And those were some of it's complicated, right? There's probably 100 different things that are creating or the reason why. But one of them we do believe is because of our right-of-ways being more accessible. It could just be coincidence that our outages are happening closer to the building. You know, you never know. So if you look at outages split up by the cause, although trees is still kind of that high area, you can see from this year, which is 2014, 2015, in general, we're trending in the right direction when it comes to trees. Vehicles and machineries is still fairly large. And then from there, it's equipment and some of these other things. Right away, this is just tracking the budgeted dollars and then how much completed we are in the cycle. So you can essentially tell that the board has put dollars into our right-of-way project consistently from 2016 to 21. And I would say continuing on through 2023 too. So then if you look at lost consumer hours by cause of trees, right, which is, this is one metric that we look at, okay, how successful is your right-of-way program? And you can see lost consumer hours by trees has been declining since 2015. And we started our right-of-way program in 16. In 2018 was the ice year, I believe, wasn't it? Or was that 19?
Yeah,
18. So I'm going to transfer it over to Matt to go over some of our finance stuff.
Wait, let's click.
Yeah, just push down.
From here, you can see our interest rate is higher than everybody else. That's because we haven't borrowed as much money the last few years as probably everybody else has. As interest rates were lower, we borrowed less, and this will drop after the money we borrowed last year, it'll be lower next year. Power cost as a percentage of revenue. This is what we pay to, out of every dollar we take in, this is how much goes to Hoosier for the power. So ours is higher than most everybody else. This is if we take out our power percentage, if we take out the IPT, we're still a tick higher than the state, the country, for our size and for Hoosier. So we still pay, even when you take them out, we still pay a larger percentage of the dollars we get. Out of every consumer dollar, we have less dollars here locally to work with than others as a percentage. Next is electric revenue for KWH sold. And this is, I took out the one with IPT because I thought without shows really, this shows that we're taking in less dollars per every kilowatt hour we've sold. Same thing, total controllable expenses. It all boils back to the same general idea. Total controllable expenses per kilowatt without IPT, it's a little bit higher, but we're still lower than the state, the country, our size, and for Hoosier. So, all right, this is the Form 7. If you look through here, you can see, or in the back, you probably can't. So I'll tell you that in general, kind of what it says. If you look at 2021 state, that's the far right one. Our interest expense, it's $2.86 per mil. Our, let's see, what's that one? Tax expense is $2.09. Our depreciation is $8.13. Our expenses are $24.19. Our power cost is $77.79. Our revenue is $118.01. And our gross margin then is $40.22. And our operating margins is $2.95. And that is the state average there for 2021. If you go to the column, that's the far right column. If you go back one column from the right, that is our 2021 year end. So our interest expense is $2.08. The state was $2.86. So we spend less money on interest than the state average. Our tax expense is $1.65. The state average is $2.09. Our depreciation is $4.20. The state average is $8.13. Our expenses are $15.20. The state average is $24.19. Our power cost is $67.38. The state average is $77.79. Our revenue is $93.56. The state average is $118.01. Our gross margin is $26.18. The state gross margin is $40.22. And our operating margins is $3.05, and the state average is $2.95. So what I think that shows that we do more with less in general. I mean, we charge less for our power, we pay less for our power, but we also spend less locally than everybody else too does on expenses. This is just our equity. We're at 64% as of the end of 2021.
I'll take ACSI. So ACS, oh,
I was
sorry.
going to ask, anybody have any questions on any of those?
ACSI is a scoring of customer satisfaction. It's a scoring system that they use across every industry. You can see in 2008, we were 82. We dipped down as far as 72 in 2015. We do this basically every 2 years. And so we scored 75 in 21, and then we'll get results this year for where we're at. This is just a metric of what we write off. You can see we're in really good shape as far as what we wrote off in 2021. Essentially, these numbers look really, really good because of two things. One, our folks up front do a really, really good job of calling people, right? And two, we have the prepaid program, which has saved a lot of write-offs. In fact, to the point where we probably need to look back and look at the business case because that was definitely a win when it comes to being able to get people on that don't have credit and being able to limit your liability when it comes to operating revenues being written off. And three, if you don't pay your bill, you can turn your power off. So yeah. Payment types, kind of hard to see the trends here, but as you can see, cash and mail is coming down, right? So everyone probably has an opinion as to why. I would say that some of the younger folks or younger generations are paying, and they're paying by bank draft and other electronic means, as opposed to coming in and paying for an electric bill with cash or sending it in by mail. Not huge differences, but you can see they're definitely trending. If you look at the mail right here and then the cash register, which is people coming in paying by cash. Jeannie, you want to go over our most important metrics, which is our safety metrics?
Yes, okay. In 2021, we had 0 workman's comp claims. We go by usually a 5-year average with Federated. So last couple of years there, we did well. This slide just shows the cause of the injury. We don't have more than one injury in one specific area. If we had 5 injuries in one area, we would be looking at our procedures and processes. Workman's claim dollar amounts. So this again, you can have a claim but still have no lost time or no dollars associated with it. So we haven't had any claim dollars associated for several years now. And then this is our modification factor. So 1 is the average. If your modification factor is over 1, you're doing worse than the average. If it's under 1, you're doing better. Ours has been under 1 for several years in a row. And then this just changes tune a little bit to our more our demographics. So our employee turnover by numbers for the last several years. We're going to get a 10-year average. So we'll have 1 more year and then we'll keep a 10-year rotation so we can get a little better picture of that. You can see that we have a wide range of age differences. We have several in the next 5 to 10 years who will be retiring. So that's part of our succession planning that we've been doing and planning ahead. Part of that is our apprentice linemen that we're going to be hiring this year. And then this just shows the tenure of our current employees. This has changed probably in the last 10 years. If you would have looked at this, our industry as a whole normally has long-term employees. We've had some changes here and changing times, just employment-wise, where we have a lot of younger tenured employees. So most of our employees, about 80% of our employees have been here 15 years or less now. That's the last one.
Yep, so employee survey, we do, well, we've got a baseline in 2017. We have an employee survey we send out every year. Usually get 100% participation in it. You basically agree, you know, there's multitude of questions. This was built back in 2017, so we're always measuring against that. You can see our trend looks good. I think we ended up being 160% improvement in 2021, and then we took this dip in 2022, which is down to like 105 improvement over 17. Back when I showed you the goals, there's actually a project this next year, 2023, that we're going to be working on, specifically some of the reasons to jump that back up. Again, it's kind of a culture survey, I would suggest, something that we're always looking at and moving on. Risk management, this was just a slide to kind of talk to the entire employee group to see, are there risks that need to be identified that we're not talking about? Again, that's really what that slide was for. This is our strategic planning. So as you all are aware, we've completed the whole left half, essentially. This ops review is the one in the blue, which we do yearly. We don't go through all these slides every month. This is just a yearly thing that we go through. We did our strategic planning. So like I said earlier, the employee teams have already gotten together. We've created the projects. Now it's more or less, it's going to go to the priority committee. We're going to rack and stack these things, get them resourced and put into our budgets, and then put our 3 to 5 year plan together. So that's kind of where we're at in the process. Last, this is our vision and mission. And I do know that we had talked originally in our strategic offsite around changing the mission statement to add the word safety in there. So essentially, what's approved today, which is what's on the wall, did not have safe in there. And I think when we talked about our mission statement in our offsite, we talked about changing that. So I don't know that you necessarily need to do this tonight, but it is something that the board, if we want to change that, to add the word safe in there as far as our mission. There's two schools of thoughts on that. One school is that safety is something that you have to do. It's something that, you know, it's just, it comes, right? You don't need it as your mission, some people will say, because it's something you have to do every day. The other people will say safety is important enough that we need it in our mission statement because we live it every day. So anyway, eventually we probably need to take a look at it and see, does the board agree we need to change it or not? That's really your decision. Values, we, as an employee group, got together, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago now. We had a facilitator come in and we kind of put together what our values are, what they meant to all of us. And those are the values that we created for the employees as far as values. And then our strategic initiatives that we're working on: provide differentiating value, internal and external system modernization, managing risk for long-term sustainability, safety, human resources, and then governance. So those are the 6 that we've created projects for and are planning on planning 3 to 5 year project outlay. And I believe that is it.
Questions, comments that anyone has from what Brett shared? Any other ARTA data that wasn't basically presented that anyone would want to ask about? Everyone good? Yes. All right. Thanks, Brad, Matt, Jeannie. We'll go ahead and go to the next item. And I don't know, pull this. It's the policy update.
Can we pull the actual policy up?
Yes.
Yeah, I can do that.
If you can do that. So it's one that I actually requested Brett to put on there. Not only is it lengthy, it has a lot of substance to it. And I had mentioned here, I think 2 meetings ago, that I would like to hone in on when data is requested from the board, that we can look at this policy and make certain we're following that policy as well. If data exists when a director requests it, that's one thing. If there's certain information that's requested that is not easily available in a particular format, I'd like to maybe add some verbiage that would support the board's approval on what it would take to get that information. So I hope maybe somebody has a few comments based upon that. If you could hone in on, I believe it's C, the director access to RMC data and information. Again, everyone should have read this already before coming in. So if there's any additional topic that anybody wants to talk about, we can. But I want to hone in on to C, the director access to RMC data and information. It kind of goes through the process there. And then number 2, in any instance in which the director has sought access to information or data not generally or ordinarily made available or reported to the CEO shall so report in detail to the next succeeding meeting of the board. I think right now, a lot of things that we're doing is we're making it a request in essence. And I think you come back with some things for the board. But anyway, I'd like some feedback on maybe how we should go about this.
But what I would like to see, because a lot of items are made into action items. I don't think the action item should be closed until the director asking for the information is satisfied with the information. I think that's where a lot of the additional information comes from. I know I've generated it with polls. I believe at one time we were told the average cost of polls was $7,000. With the data that we received in the package at the end of last month's meeting, it showed it's closer to $2,500 to $3,000.
Okay.
And so then based on that, I asked for more information. Because I'm seeing, and again, this is me with not having all the information, there shouldn't be a poll that cost us over $6,000 based on that expense sheet. And I could be wrong, but that's why I was asking for the information. And then on that, I don't know offhand, but I think it was 124 polls replaced and the average cost was $2,500. So again, I'm assuming most of those are single-phase polls on that specific work order. I don't know that. So that's why I asked for additional information.
The breakouts and things of that.
Correct.
And again, if it's easily accessible, I think that's fair. If it's not, I think we need as a board.
But as my fiduciary responsibility, what I was told in training, I am entitled to any information except employee folders. So I think getting information should be made easier, not harder.
No, I don't disagree with that statement. Maybe it's my opinion that there's been information that's been requested and it seems like there's a communication issue, whether it's from the person submitting the request or the interpretation of what's needed. And it just seems like there's a lot of back and forth.
Well, and I think a lot, and again, I'll just speak for Jeff Lawrence. That's the only one I can speak for. But because everything has to go through Brett, a lot of financial information is Matt. It'd be much easier if I could just talk to Matt. Or if it was something with operations that Crystal has. Like I was asking for breakouts of the commercial rates. I think I made 3 trips in and finally Brett, Crystal and I talked, and it was Crystal and I talking and I got the information. So I think a lot of this is being made harder because everything has to go through the CEO.
So are you suggesting a change to the policy, Jeff?
No, I'm just telling you my thoughts. I'm not at a point tonight to make any changes to the policy. I wasn't sure where we were going.
No, and we don't
tonight.
have to.
Because I mean, it was on here, there was no action items needed, there was no changes. I'm thinking, okay, so What are we going over? So I understand what you want now. So now I can think about this
Okay.
and what changes need to be made and how to make this information easier.
Or the request itself. And does anybody else have anything to?
So, didn't we discuss, Jeff, like, we were gonna copy Brett if we were asking individual, was that not? I know it doesn't say that in policy, but I think that we kind of agreed that we were going to.
I was
If you were
told
gonna
I
ask
was,
Matt, you were gonna
and maybe-
copy Brett or something.
no, I thought I was told that I had to go through Brett.
No, that was the record.
That's what I was told.
Go through Brad. And then,
And so whenever I call in, I ask for Brett. Now, sometimes I'll ask for Brett and Matt. This last time I asked for Brett and Matt. Brett wasn't here. Matt came on the phone. So should I go ahead and talk to him or should I wait?
again, I think in that particular scenario, you've sent it to Brad, copied Matt.
No, I was on the phone.
Who you-
I called in asking to talk to both of them and Matt answers the phone. So should I not talk to Matt then?
No, I think that works fine, Jeff. I don't,
Because then Matt followed up with an email to Brett, which Brett ended up sending it to the whole board. Of the
I don't
request.
think it was a problem at all, as long as I'm aware that.
We're gonna all be copied, all of us, because we agreed that no director should be getting information that the rest of us don't
Correct.
see.
But
So
that's
that-
where I asked for it and they send it. And I'm good with
Yeah.
that. My biggest, I want to make sure I'm following the rules, which I thought I was. Because I always ask for Brett.
I don't think there's a problem with if he calls in here and I'm not here to ask for Matt that. And I think this whole action item thing, I'm 100%, we don't need a policy change to say that's no closing action item. The director that requested it's good. I think that's fine as well. I mean, we could do that tonight. I don't need a policy change to do that.
I think we kind of have been operating that way too. If we see something on the closed list, somebody brings it up, no, that's not resolved for me, and
Just like tonight, right?
thought that was being handled.
I agree, but I'm not against it. I mean, I put the closed action items on your guys' call to order for you to review them as the requester, and if you had a problem,
Well,
let's discuss it.
I do have questions about the two packets that we were given last month, but I wanted to focus on poll before I even went to the second one. Because I do want to know what the average cost of a poll is.
The average cost of a poll is gonna be really, really hard.
No, it's not. And that's where, again, you and I had that disagreement the other day, and it's,
Now with this policy change,
but we did how many polls last year? How many of them were single phase? How many of them were three phase? What was the average cost last year?
We had that discussion in budget. Talked about it's for.
And I struggled with a lot of the numbers that we were given in the budget, and I voiced it then. So
$4,700 is what we put into the budget per poll for this year. Now, that's based upon the total average, and I can tell you that I've asked actually 5 co-ops around us for what their average poll cost is. And I can tell you that the spread between different poll, it's a job shop. I mean, you can grab 3,000 polls and average the cost, and it's not going to mean nothing because statistically,
Is it the average cost of outside resources or a combination of in-house and outside?
that's external. That 47 that we talked about in the budget is external. And that bid packet that you guys got is not, those are estimates based upon the unit pricing that they knew at that time. Now, once boots are on the ground, if I'm replacing a pole and I run into, I put an auger in the ground and put a ground rod or not a ground rod, a guide wire in the ground, I hit a rock or something. That's an assembly unit they're going to charge you for that they probably didn't put into the estimate. Right?
there should be a price on that cost sheet, what they're going to charge us for that.
There is.
And that's what I'm saying.
But they didn't know that. They did not know that until like boots on the ground. So that $2,500 per pole ain't even close to being accurate. You can't just take the dollar for that entire bid and say, the distinguishing between the 150, I think it's 154, am I right? 154 and 124, maybe was the two numbers.
One was poles replacing and one was pole removing. And Matt thought those are poles that were no longer being used.
That's what it is.
I think those are retiring poles.
Well, we know
The
they are.
difference is stuff that's at a dead end road or hadn't been serviced there in 20 years. And there's not been service there in decades. And the guys, or in this case, Brian, goes out and looks at
But
it.
those numbers,
So Steve, going back to what you want us to do, what do you want us to do this for next month?
Well, so I really want to ask Brett this question as well. I know there's been times when there's been requests that have been made in which there's been a huge amount of time and effort to come up with whatever's needed. And so from a board perspective, I know directors can get any information that they want, but if it's not easily accessible, what do we need to do as a board to go ahead and say, hey, this is what we need, this is what we need? Because there's also,
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, if you tell me why you want to know, it makes it so much easier for me to tell you exactly. If you tell me I want to know this because of X, I can give you 10 times better answer up front.
so just like, so for an example, the one that you just brought up, where we asked Crystal to produce a report for the way that action item is recorded from the email that I received is I need a top 25 list for small commercial, medium commercial, large commercial. Not, hey, I'm looking at this. Can you help me get there as a team? Like this is what I think. We knew where that was going from past discussions, right? There's like almost 10 from me looking today on this whole concept that we're selling power for less than what we pay for Hoosier. There's been hundreds of hours spent on that concept. So point is we knew exactly where that was going because it was during our cost of service study. I bet we spent 10 grand in salaries and wages to produce a report that essentially we took it to the cost of service study. You guys were all in here and he said, yeah, you cannot look at it that way. So this board spent that money for us and took our time to go get that, which again, I'll go get whatever the consensus this board wants me to do. Not a problem because it is.
I guess I'm struggling with that because Crystal ran the reports in no time.
Now, we had to meet 3 or 4 times with you to understand what the
So that cost
request
us
was.
10 grand, me coming in 3 times.
By the time we actually ran no, not that one certain
I know
thing.
what you're wanting, Steve. I'll work on it.
so anybody else have any
I've
comments?
got the dollar amount for that specific request.
Okay.
I just need to know from a board standpoint, when a request is made and we put major hours into it, if we don't know what the request is for, which means there's usually iteration after iteration after iteration. That, in my opinion, is a board decision, whether you guys want to spend the dollars to do that.
And I agree. And so Jeff, you had mentioned you understood what I'm kind of looking for. Does everybody else understand as well? Then we as a board, then if there's a request to come up with data, it may take a long amount of time to do we need to approve it as a board?
Can we get a form then so we can fill the form out requesting data? Is that what it's going to come to? Because I have filled out the member request form to get information in the past, and I'll be glad to do that, Steve. I'll fill out the form. I'll give you the reason why I'm doing it. And it's documented.
And maybe it is that simple. Let's think about that.
I think the problem for me with this whole thing has been, I think sometimes we request data that we think someone is literally going to do a query and hit a button and they're going to print us out something. And I've come to find out that
That's not the case.
hardly ever does that happen. And it always requires man-hour and time and dollars.
That's fine. Now, I'd be glad to, if you come up with a form, I'll be glad to fill the form out. I'll submit it. And then the board can vote whether I can have the information or not.
I don't think it has anything to do with getting the information or
Evidently, it does.
I think the issue for me that I didn't realize before was the dollars associated. And I'm not talking about what he's talking about, the 10 grand. I'm just talking about overtime. It does, every time we all request anything, it costs something.
Certainly does.
Even, part of me is saying, what difference does it make? If any of us ask for the information, why is the question, what do you need it for? If I need the information, or Suzanne or Dale or whoever, like, what's the question?
I guess from my standpoint, if you tell me what it's for, it might take me a day to get it together instead of 3. I mean, that's my own.
There's also hesitation when we request, and it's not given the skepticism or just curiosity of why don't you want me to have it? Why can't I have that if I'm for my fiduciary responsibility to our members? If I want X, Y, Z information, then in my mind, I start questioning, why don't they want me to have it? Why can't I have that information? I think it's just some kind of hesitancy and questioning why we can't have specific information. What, then you go back to, are they trying to hide something? Do they not want me to have it?
Never thought that, Suzanne, but I think
Yeah.
that brings up a good point. Let's communicate.
I mean, I'll give you anything you want. Just tell me why you want it. That way I give you the right thing.
Standpoint, he may help direct that you may need something else instead of.
It'd be a simple, please help me understand why X, Y, Z is costing this much versus this, and maybe something else. Because that's most of my questions. Why is this number?
That's the time I have in my staff to create the report that was just stop in and print this off.
Okay, so you take Brett out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. If I could just talk to Crystal 6 times, a lot of this goes away, and that time's cut in half.
Crystal didn't know what you were looking for.
Couldn't talk to Crystal. Based on what I thought our policy was, I had to go through you.
My point is Crystal had no idea what you were asking for. Neither of us did until about the third conversation.
Okay.
So this is 6, 7. I mean, there's real dollars in there for a question.
I don't see 10 grand though.
Plus the time to type up the timeline.
It depends on how you guys want to spend your.
And again, but you made the statement 10 grand.
I know multiple, so if I go back and look at.
No, you said on that one.
No.
Man,
No. I said on that topic, the theory of we're selling power for less than what we paid for it. There's a minimum of 10 grand spent on that. This one right here, I could have told you what exactly that was going to be used for. And what do we do the next month? So we spent all that time on the next.
hey, but you're telling me what I want to do with it, but yet you're asking me to give you a reason. You already know. So then I guess I just feel like we're going around in a circle. Steve, I will gladly fill out any form you want me to fill out to request information.
Well, I think, and I understand that as a board, we will determine if that's something.
Yeah, so we talk about that next
We can
month.
continue this in the next month. And if there's something in the interim, we'll address it through emails or what have you. Okay?
Thank you.
Fair enough. So we'll continue this discussion next month. Next topic. We have some information regarding the tariff that we talked about last month.
Do I need to leave?
I
I will refrain from voting. I will say that up front because it does involve me. And I'll be glad to leave if the board would like me to.
So we've got some additional information. I think Suzanne, you requested
I did.
this, correct?
Thank you for that.
What is the difference between these two? I won't see.
You gotta go to the corrected one. There are 2 listed.
There are 2.
First one is not correct. You gotta go to the second one.
Where's?
You may have to update your.
I'll see that.
Oh, so this just came today? Is this information just coming today?
No.
There's one, the.
I updated this morning.
No, you'll have to do it again.
It wasn't there this morning.
It's a couple $100.
It's
mine.
that's the same thing, guys.
But the second one came through today because that wasn't there this morning.
That's correct.
Mine is correcting right now.
Okay, I see the difference.
Member 2, if you look at it in the packet, is exactly the same as member 1 in the second column. It was just a typo.
Can I ask if there's updates to the meeting agenda, the call to order that happened the same day?
It's the
We at least get a text.
It's a difference of $200 in this whole thing.
I
Means nothing.
again, I need to leave. You guys can, what you need.
So that number moved from 522, that number on the very, very right for member two move from 5.1 to 6.26. It's the exact same theory.
262.
262, yeah.
But the bottom line is the 15 grand is still the 15 grand.
Right.
Yeah, there's nothing unchanged between, I mean,
Total.
materially everything, it's not gonna change your decision from rep one to rep two.
Do we know how many members are on the second rate? Not that I'm pointing
Not
out.
off my top of my head. I mean, there's probably, Crystal wouldn't put it right off the top.
You'd have to get to the 15 grand.
Yeah, I wanna
You
say,
stated that last one.
She did.
Was it?
It's like between 50 and 100. I can probably get it.
But we're talking about the difference between the rates. At the top of there is 0.0007 something, which is 7/100th of a penny, am I correct?
well, yeah, but it adds up to
Equals $15,000 for the year.
And you know what? That's pretty cheap, if you ask me, to keep the members happy and give it back to the members, to go ahead and move them ones up to that.
Who are you
The
giving it back
members.
to? Who are you taking it from to give it to those other members? You're taking it from all these people that don't have solar.
You're subsidizing.
You're
Am I giving
subsidizing
an
it.
incentive to have solar?
Do you want that? Are we as a co-op saying that we want rooftop solar? I don't know. We haven't, I'm not asking the question. But this is causing a subsidy. So if you're okay with all of us folks that don't have solar, paying the folks that do have solar $15,000 a year, then you're already
It's the is, they're creating the solar and we're buying it off of them. So we're not subsidizing them. They're creating the
the
solar.
rest of the members that don't have solar are
That's not
subsidized.
true. That's not true.
Okay,
we have to pay that.
Don't look at it that way.
okay.
We have to pay that $15,000. We have to write them a
They
check.
create
Well, that
energy.
this is on top of that, right? This is their credit. We're paying them already. If you move from this to this is on top of what they're already.
That would be an
being paid.
addition, the additional 15.
I would suggest the solar rate we have currently is incentivizing.
It's already way more than our neighbors.
And everyone else around us.
Then why are we changing? Why don't we just leave the 3 where they're at and leave the 8 where it's at?
Because we said from the beginning of the last the last two cost of service studies, we want fair and equitable rates for all
So
members.
you're penalizing those 3 people. Yes, you are. You're penalizing them for doing it
$178.
ahead of time and getting a good rate. Because they did it ahead of the rest of the ones that come through. Am I right about that? They were the first
They were-
to
they were
come
the
into the
first.
system?
They were the.
For grandfathered in, correct?
Pardon?
They have a contract.
Yes, they have a contract.
Yep.
And we went through this contract thing about grain and stuff.
And it says right at the last paragraph, it can be terminated with 30 days notice by either party. We're just trying to get all the rates the same. We don't need all these different rates. How's that fair to everyone else that doesn't have solar?
It looks like it's just 2 rates and anyone that brings in solar is going to use the second rate. And just those 3 people are just going to be on the first rate, no matter what. So leave it alone.
Suzanne, what's your thoughts?
I think the initial ones who pioneered, they're on the original one with the contract. I mean, the other rates we changed didn't have a contract along the way with the cost of service study. These are the only ones that have contract, correct?
For solar?
I mean, for anything really. The other rates didn't have contracts. These are the only rates, which it makes it tougher because these people did have contracts, but the other ones didn't.
It's not really a contract. It's a service agreement. So it's an agreement that says their interconnect is safe. That's why they did it. And we
I
still don't have a
I
contract.
want to be clear, your motion last month, though, was to move everyone to the higher rate.
Right,
And that's what's creating the $15,000 subsidy.
right. Okay, you want to do away with that?
Well, I
How much
definitely won't
subsidy?
support that.
And how much subsidy are you getting the difference between the high rate and low rate with just those three people?
It's right here.
It's gotta be 200 some odd dollars, right?
Yep.
Well, leave it alone for 200 some odd dollars. Why mess with it?
But you're consciously making a decision to subsidize folks. You understand that?
Well, you're subsidizing the people with eight. Am I correct?
No,
What do you mean you're not?
you're subsidizing these three currently. And your motion last month was to subsidize everyone who has rooftop solar. And that was going to cost the RMC $15,000.
You just said that this is subsidy on both rates. So,
It is effectively above the Hoosier. Hoosier's rate is our avoided cost, which is 3 cents. So anything we pay above 3 cents, we can buy the power from Hoosier for 3 cents. So anything we pay above 3 cents, we're paying them more than we have to pay Hoosier for the same power.
Look at the other co-ops and what they're paying.
What it boils down
It's
to.
way more, it's way less than this.
Now, from a board standpoint, that's you guys' decision on whether or not we want to encourage solar or not encourage solar. I mean, but from a dollars and cents standpoint, if we can buy the power from the coal plant for 3.5 cents, any power we buy above 3.5 cents, we're subsidized.
Foolish.
Well, it depends on your opinion. If you believe in solar and that's the wave of the future, the board may make a conscious decision. We may say that wind turbines are great. We're going to pay 15 cents for those. But that's a decision you guys make. So.
Well, the 15 grand, the subsidy is coming out of members' pockets,
It is, yeah.
coming out of,
But it's
There's only-
it's extra money we pay for power.
it's the only place that it can come from is members.
I mean, that's a board choice though
This is
on that.
no brainer as far as I'm concerned, but if you guys don't want to do it, then make a motion. You're right. It's not worth spending a lot of time over, but if that's what you want to do, then make the motion.
just leave it alone. We
Then
don't
make
have
your-
to have a motion.
Then make a motion.
Did
You made a
make
motion
to
last
change it?
month. You did.
Hey, there is one tabled, so we.
Yeah, you have to,
Matter.
you tabled a motion last month we tabled a motion last month that you made.
I said, I'll make the motion that we leave the thing as is and go on. For 200 and some odd dollars.
Does he need to make a motion or can he just withdraw his first motion?
It's tabled, so.
Needs to withdraw. Motion on the table.
Are you changing what's tabled?
Yes, he needs to withdraw it.
The one from last month. Are you doing that, Carl? You withdraw your motion from last month?
Pardon me now?
Is that you just want to withdraw your motion from last month?
Yeah, we'll withdraw the motion from last month.
Yeah.
And just put the motion in and leave it as is. Because I don't feel like you need to penalize three people because they did a good job at the beginning.
No, I don't think you need a motion to.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
Fair and equitable rates. We've talked about this since I've been on the board. Trying to get away from subsidies.
I feel either way on this one. It's just three members, but then we've been saying, yeah, fair for everybody and they've been on it for, I don't know how long. I think they've got their benefit out of it for coming in early, being early adopters, and they're not really going down that much, so. Play. Thoughts?
I'm with leaving it the same.
Pardon me?
I'm with leaving it the same.
So I need a motion if there's a change that needs to be made or suggested.
He made the motion, right?
Keep it the same.
Well, I don't know that we don't need a motion to keep it as it is
He just withdrew his motion
from the previous one.
If that's a consensus of the board, I'll support it. I mean, if you want to leave it alone, but understand what you're doing.
Yes. Understand what we're doing. Pushing this whole solar field, you name it. These guys came in here from the very get-go. I get what you're saying.
I don't care if they were first, 10th, or 12th, it doesn't matter. You're subsidizing them, and if that's the consensus of the board, I will support it. But be aware that you are subsidizing them.
But I'm not sure there is a consensus. But if there's
Someone else is free to make a motion. I mean,
now's the time.
I'll make the motion that everybody has the same solar tariff on the whole system,
Okay.
That's what, the same?
the same solar tariff. This one,
You say this one, I'm assuming, which one do you mean?
current solar.
Okay, so you're just gonna, your motion is to send the old solar.
Rescind Rev 1.
We do have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Do we have any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Clay,
Oh, yeah,
which was an aye?
For the new rate,
for the current rate,
for everybody in the current.
yes.
Suzanne?
I oppose.
Okay, so Carl, I didn't get yours either. Opposed? Okay, I'm in favor. Motion passes. 5-2. All right. The next item on the agenda is the Hoosier Energy Director. Jason's currently Hoosier Energy Director.
Jason's so inclined, I would nominate Jason. That's okay with him.
Yeah, that's fine.
We have a first,
I'll second.
we have a first and a second. Any other nominees? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, the same. Jason, here's your director. All right, the annual meeting delegate. So the annual meeting is going to be on April the 5th. Who's all planning on attending?
I'm hoping.
You're hopeful?
Haven't scheduled it yet, but I'm hoping.
Yeah, I think we just got that in the mail, actually, or information. I was planning on going as well. Anyone else?
You said you are going? You guys want to rock, paper, scissors to see?
No, he can have it.
Dale, I'm gonna nominate you.
Again, I'm not 100% sure right now. I mean,
I
I
probably have an alternate. Does that have an alternate on there? It doesn't have, it does not have an alternate. Or does it?
Form behind that piece of paper.
One on my
iPad.
It looks like a good thing, man. Yeah. Doesn't look like there's an alternate. I mean, I'm sure probably would change if something came up, but I'm gonna plan on going as well, so. Are you okay being that person, Dale? Okay,
Yeah, provided I'm
sure.
scheduled.
So I think it's probably be- Do you know? Changed? Reason if.
We'd have to vote again.
You have to change your name tag to say that you're.
If we know for sure you're going, I could rescind my nomination and nominate you. Want to do that? Dale, you agree?
Sorry, Jason, I heard you.
I can rescind the nomination and nominate Steve if we know for sure he's going and you're on the fence.
I'm on the fence. I mean, I'm hopeful and I'm expecting to, but I don't have it scheduled.
Okay. Nominate you instead.
Okay. So we have a first,
I'll second.
a second. Better wait for. Fine. We're voting on the Hoosier delegate. We have a first for me being the voting delegate. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. All right. The next topic then is the nominating committee. And this is where I want to make important. We had approved a nominating committee member, Tim Nobby, that you come up with, Carl. And because of
Nepotism policy.
nepotism policy, we're not going to be able to accept him as a nominating committee.
Second one, Anna, Rayner, she said she didn't want to do it. So when you approved it, both of those are not in play.
Oh, okay, so we're gonna,
I got two new,
okay. So who do you have?
Wayne Geis and David Moore.
Dale?
Jeff Evans is the one who has committed to fill up to the annual election. So he's until June.
Great.
He has also committed to be on the ballot for the June election. And then the second person is Joe Dekoff. I spoke to Joe the other night on the phone.
All right, and then in my district, District 4, I have Rob Dehoff and Ed Hudson.
I'm still looking. I guess I need help from other board members and
As did I.
nominating committee members. If they could help me. I'd appreciate it. When do you need them by?
Well, yeah, I don't know. They can actually go ahead and petition
According to the bylaws, it's 60 days before the
Election.
election.
Right.
Okay.
so that takes us into April, but as soon as somebody thinks of somebody.
Sorry,
Can I get the papers so I can look through it? Help you.
the member list?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we can.
Up and. Try to see if I.
Ed Hudson.
So we have, I think, 6 nominating committee candidates that we go ahead and approve.
I'll make a motion to approve those candidates.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
There's an informational meeting tomorrow on the night, Janie, is that correct?
6 PM.
Here? I don't think so on that.
Yes.
I presume Joe has been
For
contacted.
the candidates, yes, tomorrow night candidate.
I know it's a challenging effort to try to find a nominating committee. And maybe we can have some discussion regarding,
It doesn't have to be tonight, but I'd like to have that discussion.
okay. Because I'll just leave it at that. We'll follow up with the discussion on nomination committee members at some point. Okay. Next item, yeah. No. Hoosier.
Yeah, we had a board meeting on the 13th of February, and tonight we're going to actually spend a little time. We're going to go through some slides from that meeting as we have the results, the financial and operating results and statistics from 2022. As they were presented, Brett's got some slides that he's going to go through. Actually, I'll go through them, but before we start the slide deck, I want to direct your attention to the minutes from the meeting. I specifically let me find it, sorry. Number 9, member flexibility discussion. This has been an ongoing topic as Hoosier, as certain distribution systems have requested some flexibility in terms of the wholesale power contract. So Hoosier is working on some alternatives to accommodate those folks. Obviously, if we amend wholesale power contract for those individuals, it will be for all 18. We're trying to navigate through what that looks like. There are some caveats to that in that we have some grandfathered MISO agreements. And if there are major changes to the wholesale power contract that we have with Hoosier, it would jeopardize those grandfathered agreements. 2022, those agreements totaled $19 million for the 18 collectively. So we have to be very careful if there are amendments to the wholesale power contract, because we could lose that $9.5 million. And that's an annual savings, not a one-time deal. So we are working through that. You guys need to know about that. Again, that's been an ongoing topic, but in relation to that, the wholesale power contract itself, the anniversary date for that renewal is this year. So how that works is it's an automatic renewal process, and it's outlined in item 4 of your minutes. They all expire January 1st, 2055. There's an automatic extension provision for 5 years on each 5-year anniversary date. And the next anniversary date is January 1st, 2024. So what that means is, as long as all 18 agree, we're going to renew the wholesale power contract. It requires no action of this board. If one member system out of the 18 says, no, we're not going to let it automatically renew, then each member system board will have to take a motion and will have to approve to renew. So again, I just bring that up because that anniversary date is January 1st. No one's given any indication that they're not going to renew their wholesale power contract, but you should all be aware of that. So let's start with the slide deck. All-in wholesale rates for 2022 were higher, 7% higher. You can see the results there. You probably can't read that. And we could forward the slide deck to you guys if you want to see it in more detail. But basically, I'm going to read it off. I don't have it here. 7% higher from the global energy crisis, further magnified by the ongoing war in Europe. Variable costs are higher. Coal, natural gas, market power purchases increased 100% compared to budget forecasts for the year. Higher variable production costs are reflected in the tracker rates for 2022 and 23. So those average wholesale, and again, that's an average for all 18. We're a little bit lower than that because of our load factor. But That includes all trackers. Let's go to the next slide. So this just kind of gives you a snapshot to you can see there, the variable production costs and non-member revenue, they're helping to determine what your tracker is. So you see coal higher, natural gas purchase power obviously is higher, but then you have a non-member revenue offset. Since the power market was a lot higher, we were able to run and sell power to generate some income for the members, which offset some of the increases we saw in variable production costs. Next slide, please. So these are the steps that we took to help keep everyone's bills lower. You know that we issued two special patronage retirements during 22. And then there's where we ended up. Hoosier 21 actual, Hoosier 22 budget, and Hoosier 22 actual. So you can see our equity numbers pretty stable at about 27%. Net margin the same, actually it's gone down just a little bit. Again, that's from some of those mitigation steps we took in retiring capital credits. And then you have the net margin numbers. So with all of those steps in place, our actual 22 margin was down to 2.1%. And I know that we've had discussions like when Donna's been here before about why do you have to have margin? Why is it 3%? Why is it 2%? We have debt covenants that we have to meet. And if we don't keep a rating with credit agencies, it will cost us millions of dollars in interest because we've got to keep a credit to keep our interest rate as low as possible. Next slide. So here is the outlook for wholesale rates. Can you go up a little bit there? Is that say 23 on the far right?
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the all-in rates for 23. There's the 23 budget. We know we're already higher for a lot of reasons, but you can see up there, the trackers is projection. These are just projections. Don't take this to the bank, but those are the projections for the tracker numbers. So while it's a significant increase, you know, it's important to remember that the previous 3 years or 2 years before this, we were running the negative tracker. So members were saving quite a bit of money, but that's doing what it's supposed to do. When variable costs are low, it should be returned to the members. When variable costs are high, everybody's going to have to pay. Next slide. This one I just threw in here because I thought it was interesting for you guys to see. We haven't really talked about this a whole lot, but so these are all of Hoosier's generating resources and PPAs that are on our system for 2022. So, you know, we've had a lot of discussions about Merom and the transfer to Hallador and entering in the PPA for that power. So you can see as you go through October, the colors shift quite a bit. So that big brown column that you're seeing is the Merom PPA. So all the ones on the bottom are owned assets. All the ones on the top are PPAs that we utilized in 2022. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the resource mix that we were looking at. Because, you know, they're trying to diversify and get away from some shaft risk associated with Merom. You can see that it was a pretty big percentage of our generating resources prior to the transfer to Hallador. Next slide. You guys have probably all seen this before. It's not a very good map because you can't see Illinois or the outline of Indiana very well, but you've probably seen this before. I just want to give you like an overview of where the transmission lines are and where some of these PPAs that we are involved in, or even our owned assets are located. Holland right there is, you know, in the middle of Illinois, and that is an owned asset that we have with Wabash Valley. Next slide. Again, just an FYI, more or less, this does have all 18 member systems listed, which we normally wouldn't do, but we're the fourth one there. So just to give you an idea of where we are as far as outage minutes with Hoosier. Next slide. So we talk a lot about MISO and their management of our power grid. So I'm just showing this as a reference. And this is across the entire MISO footprint. This just isn't Indiana zone, but you can see our on-peak pricing in 21 was $48, in 22 it went to $81. The list, obviously, the reasons are listed there on the side. Next slide. Again, same thing. This is the capacity auction that MISO holds. So when we're doing these PPAs at Hoosier, there's two buckets. You have to have an energy bucket, KWH, and you have to fill a capacity bucket, KW. This is the capacity, and they're going to the four seasonal construct, and it gets kind of complicated. But I showed this slide because I just want you to see the costs that are being someone's going to have to pay. This is not in our control. They signal that there is not enough generating capacity
They're finding
at certain
they to
times.
have a generating plant.
At certain times. That may be the end of the slide deck. I know we went through all that stuff kind of quick, but does anybody have any questions about any of that? We haven't talked about that stuff a lot.
If I understand right, that one there, they're effectively saying, hey, we need the power plant.
But we are in very good, we're not going to have to go to the auction for a lot of capacity.
Right, I mean, in general, the people who do, this is saying.
People that
pay for it.
are going to have a big problem.
Yeah.
We actually have a little capacity that we're going to be able to sell in the summer. We're still just a tick short in the winter. But again, it goes by 4 seasons now, not just 2. So it's not, when you say winter, I'm not really sure which 2 you're talking about anymore, but it's more spring, fall, winter, summer. But we're in good position in some of those seasons, but not all. So anyway, that's a 30,000 foot view in 3 minutes of where we're at with Hoosier.
Okay, thanks, Jason. From an IEC perspective, so John Cassidy was named our IEC's new CEO. He'll begin his reign on March 15th, if I'm not mistaken, and he does come from Wabash. And the other thing I have to report is that there is going to be some renovation and additional construction to the new facility that has been purchased by IEC. I think there's, the day that we still have the facility where we're currently located runs through like next April, I think April of 2024. But the goal is to be in the new building before that, a little bit before that. So that's really all I have to report. Any director training conferences that were attended? A couple quick things from an email that I'd sent out, I think yesterday. The work that Lena is doing for us, she had given us some dates, and I'd heard from a couple directors that it was not going to work for them. So I went ahead and reached out back to her. We'll start early at 5:30 on our March board meeting. And we'll go over that with her beginning around 5:30. So we'll start early and then we can have our regular March meeting. Other than that, I think I need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
A second. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Couple quick minutes. We're going in next.
I could email it to you. I know you don't hit that.
Yes. I smooth ticket.